James, breaking news today, which I think will thrill you and Mrs. Matthews.
Go on.
It's whiskey related.
Tell me.
Well, it is the first deliverable, the first tangible bit of news that from the state visit. Donald Trump has agreed to scrap tariffs on Scottish whiskey.
Yeah, I saw that actually. But listen, we'll take that deliverable in this house.
I'm Mark Stone in Washington, D.C.
And I'm James Matthews. I'm at home in Georgetown, just down the road.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the final couple of days of this state visit. What deliverables did we get out of it? Was it a success? Well, I got on the phone briefly to President Trump and I asked him all of that, and we will tell you what he said.
And Charles and Donald, the bromance is over for now. The King and Queen have left the United States after what has generally been deemed a very successful trip.
Yeah, and in other news, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, has been grilled on the United States war in Iran. We will get into what happened on Capitol Hill. It was fiery for sure.
Now, Mark, the president has had a busy few days hosting the King and Queen, but he has found time for his other old British friend, you.
Well, yes, and a growing number of reporters, let's be clear. With diminishing returns, I think, is the way you could describe these calls. Nevertheless, he did tell me what he hasn't told anyone else in the British journalistic community yet, as we record, which is breaking news. He had a great time. He absolutely loved every part of the state visit. The King has just left. He told me he is a fantastic guy. And I said to him that we were watching the images of the King and Queen as their BMW, their armoured BMW, rolled up, I think, for the fourth time at the South Portico. It's almost the case that they could have just let themselves in by this stage. They've arrived so many times at the White House. This was the last arrival to say cheerio before they headed off to Arlington and then to Virginia. So I thought it was a good moment to try the president, and lo and behold, he did pick up. And he told me how brilliant he thought that the trip had gone. But what I wanted to know from him, two things, was, first of all, did this very successful trip make any difference to his pretty fractious relationship with Keir Starmer? Answer, maybe not. And I also wanted to know what he made of the speeches, because on the face of it, we've heard from Trump and others that they were just fantastic. The speeches went down really well. But, you know, as you and Laura were discussing, James, on the pod a couple of days ago, the subtext of those speeches, it was careful, pointed language, wasn't it? They were sort of deftly delivered, but actually it was a riposte to Trumpism in many ways. And so I wanted to know what he thought about that.
Yeah, the whole speech was carefully crafted, certainly, wasn't it? Cleverly managed and measured. And actually, he skewered Donald Trump without the president actually feeling the pain. I thought all the headlines, and, you know, when you look back on this whole trip, that Congress speech will be chief among the headlines, and it will be the speech where I think the King stuck it to the president. It was robust, certainly, and a clear riposte to Donald Trump and the way he runs this country and the way that he sees the rest of the world.
Yeah, but either the president is simply not recognizing that or choosing not to recognize that, because he said to me it was a brilliant speech. It was delivered beautifully and with that beautiful accent he's got. He got a standing ovation, and I thought it was fantastic in all respects. So it seems to me the president is choosing not to recognize, or perhaps just it went right over his head.
Well, he doesn't do subtlety, does he, Donald Trump?
Yeah, the emphasis in the King's speech on alliances, the importance of America remaining at the heart of NATO, the stuff about checks and balances, Magna Carta, all of that stuff either went straight over the president's head or because he has such a fondness for the King and doesn't really want to be seen ever to criticize him, that he just let it all go. I pushed the president on that, and all he said in response was, he, the King, is a much different person than your prime minister. Your prime minister has to learn to deal the way he deals, and he'll do a lot better. Ouch.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, amidst all the talk of how this was a trip to reset relations, it's interesting that the King and Queen are barely out the door, and he's already trolling Sir Keir Starmer.
Yeah, I mean, as we've talked about before, he sees such a clear distinction between the royals and the current government. I was struck this week that I think he feels like he's almost half British. I mean, he feels he's got because of his Scottish connections, he's got a right to be able to criticise the government if he believes their policies are going in the wrong direction. And so again, he repeated to me what he said so many times before, that he doesn't like Keir Starmer's direction on immigration, he doesn't like his direction on energy, but that he loves the king and he gets on very well with Keir Starmer. So it doesn't appear right now, at least, that this visit has made really any difference when it comes to the relationship. And I put that to someone who's kind of at the heart of the process in terms of the visit, a diplomatic source. I said, look, despite the clear success of the week, I'm not convinced how much it moves the dial with the Starmer relationship. To which my source replied, "To be seen, but to be fair, that was never the intent. This has been longer in the planning and is about something deeper." And I think, they would say that, wouldn't they? But I do also think that the vibes we've got this week, the Anglo-American vibes, have been really very positive, haven't they?
Yeah, that word deeper is interesting. And indeed, the king, in that speech, he spoke about the bond that had been forged, through time and over decades. And that's interesting, I think, because I think the message was beyond Donald Trump, actually, and largely to the American establishment and the American people. And, we're into interpretation now, but I think there was a message in there. Look, our relationship lasted long before Donald Trump. It will last long beyond him. We share too much in common. We have achieved too much together to throw things away on the whim of the current president or whatever disagreements we feel we have at the moment.
Yeah, I could completely agree. I did push him on the relationship because while all that you say is true, what is also the case is that this is a highly consequential presidency that we're in at the moment, and so if the president doesn't get on with the current prime minister, even if all the mechanics underneath that are getting on and the peoples get on, it is a problem. And so I said, do you think that your relationship with the Prime Minister can improve, is improving? And he paused for what seemed like such a long time that I thought the line had gone. I thought maybe he'd hung up on me. Then he said, I can't give you an answer to that. I can tell you one thing. Our relationship with the King is very good. But, that's another individual. We'll find out, he said. But I like Keir Starmer very much. I just think he's made a tragic mistake on immigration and on energy, as we discussed. So, I think the jury's out right now as to whether this visit has had any impact.
I think you're right. The jury is out. But I think a clear indication that actually not much has changed politically in terms of the wider context over the course of this trip is in what was going on as the King and Queen were packing their bags, getting ready to move on. Donald Trump, well, he was on the phone to Vladimir Putin. He was on social media threatening to pull troops out of Germany. Very, very much a president putting distance between the United States and Europe, the very distance that the King has been trying to reduce over the course of his trip.
Yeah, it did make me laugh that it was the speed with which business as usual returned once the King had left the White House was quite remarkable. I mean, I know we had the goodbye today, but the formal departure from the White House was yesterday, was Wednesday. And within a very short space of time, there was posts on Truth Social. It was Trump with a machine gun, dressed as a kind of Mr. Nasty, with the words "No more Mr. Nice Guy." Yeah. And then we had this news of the hour and a half long call with President Putin. I mean, it was like the King was a distant memory so quickly.
I thought it was interesting, Mark, that one of the last stops for the King and Queen was Arlington Cemetery, which again reinforces this theme that, America and the United States have fought wars together, have achieved together, have sacrificed together for the common good. So, I mean, Arlington would have been a natural choice for the itinerary in any case. But I think in terms of the wider context, maybe it was a place that they definitely felt they had to go and was entirely in keeping with why they were here. There was an interesting, in terms of speech, in terms of speeches, Trump was interesting, wasn't he, when he stood up at the state dinner, said that Charles agrees with me on Iran. We're never going to let that opponent, Iran, have a nuclear weapon, which, I think anybody looking on and welded to the formalities of all of this, they would have been appalled by that. I think Buckingham Palace would have been chewing their knuckles. This had been
Do you know?
a private conversation stuff, which was being aired quite cheerfully by the president.
So a few points on that. I'm glad you brought that up because I'd forgotten about it. But there were some interesting things. So first of all, when that happened, I was in the East Room. We were allowed in for a few moments to listen to the speeches, and when that happened, I just turned and I saw two of the royal correspondents from British newspapers, who breathe the royal family day in, day out. Who looked so shocked. There was a kind of pearl clutching. I mean, they could not believe that the president had said this.
They need to go out more.
Yeah, right. Well, exactly. I thought that. I was like, really? I mean, it was a very Trumpy comment to make. And I actually, if you drill down a bit, I assumed that it should be no breaking news that the king probably doesn't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Yeah. What he may disagree with the president on, and we will never know, is the methods to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. But it was hardly breaking news. But
you're right. It would have been a far bigger story had the president said Charles wants Tehran to have a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, or Charles agrees with me on my methods in Iran, or agrees with my Iran war, all of that. Anyway, it was quite funny to see the royal correspondents who will remain nameless, but was certainly not our own Laura Bundock, who's much more sceptical.
Yeah, she's more streetwise.
She's much more. It was someone else.
Couldn't resist invoking the monarchy to buttress his position and politics on Iran.
Yeah. On Arlington, did you see the massive diplomatic gaffe?
Tell me.
The Union flag was upside down. The flag that was being held aloft by a couple of U.S. service members directly behind the King and the Queen was being flown upside down. I don't quite know how they managed to get that wrong, but there we go. No, not a good look.
How did the president sound? Because he sounds different from the way we hear him and see him in public, yeah?
He sounded upbeat. He sounded very happy. He was standing in the Oval Office. We know that because we had just watched him on the sort of live pool feeds, walking through the Rose Garden, having just said goodbye to the King and the Queen. So he went into the Oval Office, and that's when we spoke to him. He sounded very upbeat. But you're right. He's when he's not performing. He is less performative. He talked about Obama at one stage when he was talking about the bust of Winston Churchill. Had he been in public, I think he would have said Barack Hussein Obama, which is what he always calls him. No, in this phone call that was not to be broadcast, because that's always the condition of these things, he just called him Obama. So less performative.
Yeah, no, you did well to get him. He's never taken any of my calls, but he did call me. He pocket dialed me about a week and a half ago, and actually on a day when it was all kicking off with Iran. I tried to call him, no answer. The phone went, and sure enough, it was his number. So I picked up, ready for the big conversation, and I just heard a couple of phrases. You're a good-looking guy. What a perfect guy. And I thought, is he talking to me? So I'm like, Mr. President, it's James Matthews from Sky News. To which there was no response. So he was clearly talking to somebody else in the Oval Office, presumably. There was a college sports day, so there were clearly beautiful, good-looking guys in his company.
Wow.
This went on for 40, 50 seconds, which, Mark, it clearly was actually quite amusing at the time. But
raises so many questions, right?
It is jaw-dropping and a serious threat to U.S. national security if the President of the United States is pocket dialing strangers.
Wow. Goodness me. There we go. James, I covered the sort of 2 days at the White House, and then you did the Congress bit, the speech there. But what I didn't see at all, and you did see in New York, was the real people, real Americans interacting with the King and the Queen. How was that?
Yeah, well, that was the plan, to see the people interacting. There was no interaction, actually, Mark. Certainly not with members of the public because of the extent of security. My brief was to get in amongst the crowds and just hoover up the atmosphere. We got to the World Trade Center site, which, you've been there, it's a haunting, solemn place, very impressive place to visit. And we couldn't get close. I mean, there were fences literally 150 yards from where the wreath laying ceremony was taking place. So, there was no big gathering of public, certainly, that had come to witness the spectacle. Although, they were there, certainly. And people who, for whom the 9/11 bombing, people, who have a direct connection to 9/11, Christine, I spoke to her. She came to look on and to pay her own respects because she lost her husband in the wake of 9/11 through illness as a result of the attacks. Let's listen to her and what she had to say about the visit of the royal couple.
I came here today to thank the King for coming to honor the victims of 9/11, including my late husband. And I wanted to thank the UK for coming to the US's defense during 9/11, along with all the other NATO countries, the only time that Article 5 was ever invoked. And I don't think people appreciate the UK enough.
So there you go. It was appropriate for people that the King and Queen were in town. And, I think they brought with them the power of empathy, didn't they? A connection with the enduring grief of their American host, a demonstration, I think, of understanding and support. And it went down well. It was well received and, fitted into the script of the visit to strengthen the bond between the US and UK. A reminder of when the UK, in the context of NATO, had stood with America, invoked Article 5 of NATO, which plays into the political message we heard from the King in Congress.
Yeah.
That was the World Trade Center, Mark. I relocated to stop number 2 in Harlem, New York. First time I'd ever been there. And I have to say, when I went there, I mean, I know Harlem from legend and watch, movies, watching The Godfather of Harlem. And we got to Malcolm X Boulevard, and I thought to myself, this couldn't be further from Britishness, monarchy, royalty, the politics of the UK and US. And I suppose I was surprised to see at the end of the street a crowd of several dozen, actually, people who'd come, the odd British flag, to pay their respects, to wave. And they're quite excited, actually.
I think it's great. I'm glad that the British haven't really soured with the United States, and they're trying to keep the bridge between our two countries, strong.
Is that a worry for you?
I think Britain is a great ally. We really need them in the future, so we need to make sure we do keep things right between us.
Good opportunity for us to keep building those relationships. Saw your speech last night. You seemed to strike the right tone.
So excitement, Mark. I think they were glad to be there, glad to see him, but there was no pressing of the flesh. He was in the back of the car, window down, and they got a wave. But Mark, I spoke to one guy, and he was the same age as the King, he told me. And this guy tells me that the special relationship does endure and will endure. He said he was on a Bob Jackson bicycle, immaculate, beautifully preserved, a bicycle made in Leeds since 1935. So a real kind of British masterpiece, this thing. He's quite proud of that. And he said, I know the UK. I've been to the UK. I had a girlfriend from Burnley, he said. So we interviewed him. And at the end of that, he told me again, I had a girlfriend from Burnley. And I said, well, she might be watching this. And, just for that half second, his eyes lost me. And I could see him, he was 20 again with his girlfriend from Burnley. And I thought to myself, well, maybe that's the special relationship, a shared past, heritage, culture, and love. So I think in that guy, and in many people I've seen in the past 36, 48 hours, I think we're in pretty good shape, the United States and the United Kingdom.
James Matthews, you old softy. We're all blubbing here in the studio. That's wonderful. That has made the week for me, because I have to say I'm a bit of a softy. I think I agree with that wholeheartedly.
We're all getting older, but in the hearts of Harlem lies a little bit of Burnley, Mark.
So notwithstanding what you found in New York, in Front Royal, which is a quite a Republican town, just on the foothills of Shenandoah, there were a lot more real people. And I have it on good authority that everyone was happy and excited. There was a coronation quiche on offer made by His Majesty's ambassador's chef, which the King and Queen offered as part of a block party. There were clog dancers, and there were sheep with day-old lambs. So it was right up the King's Street, I'm sure.
Yeah, the picture I saw was, I don't know if you saw it, the King and Queen sitting in a restaurant somewhere, and they'd clearly been served what looked like a pepperoni pizza. And the two of them were sitting with their hands down, no cutlery, stiff-backed. And almost the speech bubble would have been, what on earth is this? Like they've never seen a pizza in their lives. And Front Royal, Mark, of course, I've actually been there a few times. When you're going to the Blue Ridge Mountains, that's where you go and have a bite to eat. There is Rural King, which, as we've discussed before, is a big place. It's like a B&Q with guns. They sell Second Amendment T-shirts.
Yeah, this is where Front Royal is where you take Susan on your dates, isn't it? You've told me about Front. I've only been there once. You've been there lots of times. Poor old Susan gets to go there every weekend.
Yeah, date nights to B&Q with guns. It's come to this. But listen, see, in this place, they sell Second Amendment T-shirts. Actually, if you're a tourist listening to this, go there. It's, you can hold a gun, all the rest of it. They sell T-shirts that have slogans like, United we stand, disarmed we fall, God, guns, coffee.
Anyway, it all worked out. I think there was we can reveal now that there was a huge amount of angst about the security on the Front Royal element of the trip. In fact, I heard that that weeks ago the British government weeks ago, the British organisers of the state visit went on a recce to Front Royal and were trying to work out how they were going to organise a block party and get people to come to the block party on a weekday. A block party is like a street party, but blocks in America, and get people to come. But they couldn't tell the people of Front Royal at that stage who the special guest was. So they were apparently all the folk of Front Royal were saying, "Well, you're expecting us to take a day off work, go to a block party for some mystery guest, and we've got no idea who this person is." And the answer was, well, yes. Anyway, they pulled it off, and I think it was a spectacular success, wasn't it?
Yeah, and just as a footnote, and in terms of preparation, it wasn't just security, was it? Because the embassy, they sent somebody in advance, like a toilet recce or a bathroom recce, as they would call it here, to pinpoint a garage, a petrol stop, where the King or Queen could have a pit stop on the way. So that was somebody's task, to inspect the toilets between here and Front Royal.
I can't confirm whether that story is true. I've tried to stand it up. I've tried to stand it up, but what I can confirm is that some of the restrooms in those service stations between here and Front Royal are grim indeed. So God help the King.
Yeah, been there, done that.
James, we have talked so much about the royals and had lots of fun with that. We haven't got much time for everything else, but we must rattle through the Iran war because, as I said before, business as usual returns quite quickly here. So I imagine when wheels are up with the King and the Queen, we will find ourselves returning to all issues Iran very, very quickly. And we know that the president is ratcheting up the tension once again, isn't he? He's losing patience.
Yeah, and, yet again, the president presenting the politics of world crisis as a comic strip. You mentioned the post on Truth Social, 4 a.m. in the morning, of himself with a gun, explosions going off in the background with "No more Mr. Nice Guy" as the tagline, which, I don't know, Mark, as a visual, presumably carries the threat of some kind of military escalation. And we know that the Pentagon is presenting the president with military options once more. In terms of the negotiations, there's nothing of a profile. One assumes that they are going on in the background, but with the noises coming out of Tehran, we appear no closer to any kind of deal than we were, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. And on the face of it, military action would appear very much an option once more.
President Trump has rejected Iranian proposals to reopen the Strait of Hormuz in exchange for the US blocking Iranian vessels in the strait. So it's kind of hard to see where it goes from here. Both sides keen to present themselves as having the upper hand, even though President Trump continually says that he has all the cards. You have to wonder, and I've heard noises over the past couple of days. There is a general sense that maybe the president might return to kinetic action, as they call it, military action, if only to a sort of short, sharp shock to sort of try and jolt the negotiations back online, or maybe to declare a quick victory.
Yeah, he doesn't like the Iranian proposal because that would be about the blockade and the Strait of Hormuz. It would knock the nub of the problem into the never, Iran's nuclear material. And we have a fresh statement from the new leader saying that Iran will hold on to its nuclear program. Trump is in a situation where he agreed a ceasefire. He agreed a ceasefire because it suits him. He doesn't want to return to any kind of kinetic action, any kind of military strikes. But increasingly, it looks like his only option. The extent of it will be the question. Will it be fleeting strikes from the air, or will we once again come back to this discussion about boots on the ground and all the difficulties that entails and all the financial costs? We've had Pete Hegseth, Defense Secretary, before committees on Congress being grilled incessantly about the cost of this war to this country. $1 billion a day, we are told, and at a time when prices are going up and Americans are unhappy.
Yeah, oil prices are at a staggering 4-year high, $126 a barrel. That's the highest since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022.
I mentioned Pete Hegseth before the Armed Services Committee, Mark. Let's have a listen to some of that.
There's no evidence that we are safer because of this war. We did not have any evidence that Iran intended to imminently attack this country in any way, shape, or form. So I disagree with your assessment that we were under threat.
Do you not believe them when they say death to America?
Listen, our adversaries use rhetoric all the time. What I'm concerned about is we are not safer, and I would just like to know why you have not sought the support of the American people, and 3 out of 5 Americans are against this war today.
I believe we do have the support of the American people, and we have briefed regularly what this mission looks like and why it's critically important that we undertake it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I didn't get to ask President Trump about Iran, or indeed about his announcement 24 hours earlier that he is considering moving US troops currently stationed in Germany out of Germany. Germany hosts between 35,000 and 40,000 US troops. If he was to start moving them out, well, that would be a signal of American retreat when it comes to American support militarily for Europe to help defend itself at a time when it does need that help with Russian aggression. Again, it goes back to the point, business as usual. The king comes here, tells him how important cooperation is, tells him how important it is that America stands alongside Europe. What does he do 24 hours later? He threatens to pull out American troops from Germany. So another hint that maybe things underneath all these positive vibes didn't actually make all that much of a difference.
Mark, before we go, let's talk about the bell, the gift to the president from the king.
Yeah, this was a gift that was given at that state dinner, and very quickly, pretty much universally, it was described as a diplomatic masterstroke. Whoever it was that thought about this gift deserves a medal, I think. It is a bell from a little-known submarine from World War II, a Royal Navy submarine that operated in the Pacific, and it was called HMS Trump. And so what did they do? They decided to find the bell from inside that submarine and bring it over here to America and get the king to present it to President Trump. It went down very, very well indeed, as you can imagine, not least because it's gold and it's got the word Trump written on the front of it.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Somebody had their thinking cap on.
They certainly did. But obviously, I needed to ask the president where it is, where it's going to go, what he thinks of it. I think the bell is fantastic, he told me. And then he said that it was going to be put in the Oval Office. And I could hear someone behind him as the call was going on saying, "Yes, sir." So that's where it's going to be. And I said, "Where are you going to put it? Do you know where you're going to put it in the Oval Office?" And he said, "Yeah, pretty much. I think I know. Maybe I'll put it right next to where we have him." And I guess he was then pointing, because he was in the Oval Office when he made this call, pointing to the bust of Winston Churchill, where we have him. And then he said, "I think we'll have him next to your great Prime Minister. I think the bell is fantastic." So there you go. You heard it here first, James, on Trump 100. The bell will be next to Winston.
Yeah,
so Winston.
Yeah, we'll get that confirmed next time you give him the bell, Mark.
Humbug.
Thank you very much for listening and watching. Do get in touch with us at the usual place, Trump100 at sky.uk.
Have a great weekend. See you next week.
All the best.
Bye.